Hey friends, Christy here with Little Roots Ranch, and today I am on site with my 2024 garden. And this video, no, I'm just kidding. I like the idea of using this as a mic, but I'll try to refrain. Anywho, so this video is about things that didn't go well for me in the 2024 garden. And the reason I want to share these things with you, there's a few reasons. Number one is I like to share everything. And honestly, I think, especially social media in general, it's always easiest to talk about the great things, the beautiful things. And, you know, of course, I have a bunch of pictures of the most magnificent cabbage you've ever seen and all that. But in real life, even as an ultra experienced gardener, farmer, whatever, I still have failures. And there's not a gardener, or I believe, not a gardener or a farmer out there who didn't struggle with something every single year. And I think new gardeners see these beautiful pictures, beautiful videos, all that, and they're like, why doesn't my garden look like that? Well, they're just not showing you the bad parts. So I try to be very transparent and honest. And you can learn from my mistakes, and I can also learn from my mistakes, which it's great because in the fall, it's not all fun and gourds. But in the fall, one of the best things to do is to have a heart-to-heart with your garden as far as take anything that you've learned this year. What went really well? What went really terrible? What ideas do you have to do things different? And jot that down right now, either a garden journal or just a piece of paper or a margin of a book, whatever it is, because I almost guarantee you in the spring, you might forget the things that you learned right now, what's still fresh in your mind. But anyways, I have my little list. And so I'm going to go through and talk about some fails that I had in my garden, and we'll go over them. So number one is corn. Now, I have a pretty good legacy for having gorgeous, amazing corn. Just gorgeous, taller than me, like me and a half, and I'm like 5'9". And just gorgeous, multiple ears per plant, all that stuff. This year, my corn wasn't exactly knee-high by 4th of July, which I did everything the way I always do. I am growing a new kind, but still, so maybe I can blame the seed, but maybe not. So it wasn't quite knee-high by 4th of July, but it was definitely knee-high by the 4th of August and the 4th of September and the 4th of October. So basically, I don't know what happened to my corn. I'm growing a new corn. I think it's called like Butcher Block, Butcher Red Butcher, something like that. It's a dual purpose corn. It's not an ultra sweet corn, but it's great for eating fresh. And also great for drying out. And that's what I want because, I use food to sustain myself for the whole year. Anywho, that little corn just gave up on all of its life ambitions, and it is still about the same size. So I don't exactly know what happened, but that was a loss for this year. So I did buy a couple hundred ears from one of the local farms and process those. But my corn, no dice this year. Next thing are cucumbers. So the last time I had a fail on cucumbers, I think it was 3, maybe 4 years ago. And I know a lot of you also had the same problem. So let me know if you had cucumber problems this year or not. Also to add, I know there's been a lot of controversy about seed that was acquired for this year. But 99% of the seed in my garden, I've had longer. So if there was any impropriety with seeds this year or whatever, I was immune. So just throwing that there for whatever it's worth. But cucumbers, boy, when I had pigs, I think I fed them exclusively. I didn't. I know they need a well-balanced well-balanced diet. But I literally fed them just cucumbers by the hundreds. I have pretty good success with cucumbers. Amazing, actually. And then 3-4 years ago, they just would not grow. And wouldn't you know it, this year, I was a hair late on the transplanting out. I will admit that. And I know that that's one you have to get transplanted really quick. But how I made up for that was, and I was still in an appropriate time frame, I had direct sown all of the seeds, and they grew so slowly. It's like they were just paused, and kind of like the corn. So sad day, no pickles for me this year. Big truck going by. So moving on to item number 3. This one isn't such a big one, and I did have a video on it. I was late pulling my garlic, so I had some splitting, and I had to be a little bit more discerning when I was sorting into my 3 piles of eat now, storage, and seed. So that's a small thing. My broccoli, I did super awesome with broccoli this year, but I also did not as great with broccoli. This isn't more on the growing side, but on the harvesting side. My first harvest of broccoli, I think I harvested like a wheelbarrow for my own personal use. I froze it and blanched it, froze it, vacuum seal, whatever. But then I started getting bad at cutting it, and so then it all went to seed. And then when it's in seed, the yellow flowers, the bees love those, so then I wait, but then that causes me to miss other ones. So that's not really a growing problem, but just something of staying on top of harvesting it. The garlic kind of falls into the same range. Okay, moving to peppers. Peppers is another weird one. I did have some plants were successful, started all from seed, and they just weren't growing as well. I know we had a much cooler growing season this year, and a rainier, what was it, June? For sure June, and September. Just in general, it was colder and a little bit more rain than we typically have. We usually easily reach 90 days, not one drop of rain, at least where I'm at. But yeah, my peppers, also it could have been because I grew them, as I told you, I'm renovating the greenhouse, just amending the soil. It got away from me last year. And so I've got that Canadian thistle, and I don't use chemicals. Sometimes I wish I did, only in a joking manner, but so it takes a lot to like get that out, and I don't want to have to worry about it. So I'd rather just take my greenhouse out for one season, and then hopefully hopefully I will have it back and ready to go, because these peppers and tomatoes and eggplant, maybe cucumber, they need to be in the greenhouse. All right, moving on. My tomato experiment. So, which is fitting, we were just talking about greenhouse. So, as many of you know, as I transition into a berry farm, I will always grow food for myself. But as far as where I earn my money, a lot of that will be berry and value add products related to berries. And we're also putting in a mini orchard in the winter. I'll do another video about that. But anyways, so with my tomatoes, the area that I was gonna put them in, I didn't get to it in time. And so I kind of had to put them in like where it's slightly shaded, and it wasn't an ideal area, but I learned a few things. Number one, the foliage like just exploded, and I had such huge, robust plants. If you look back at the video or even pictures on social media, it's like twice as high as I am. Like I literally pruned them with a ladder, and like the top of the ladder, not just like first rung or something like that. But you know, I wish we had like the summers that we've had in the last like 5-ish years, because I did get a lot of green tomatoes. Unfortunately, I did get a pretty good amount of red, but for the hundreds and hundreds of tomatoes I had, I didn't get them. But I did learn a million green tomato recipes, and that's been fabulous. But anyway, so to conclude my experiment, I definitely think tomatoes, all the heat loving stuff, if you have greenhouse, access to a greenhouse, the means to make a greenhouse, definitely go with that. Our winters are predictable. We are cooling down in the summers, like in general, like weather trends or whatever. And so I don't anticipate next summer being, I anticipate it being how it is now, or how we just finished up, or like one drop cooler or rainier or whatever. Not like night and day difference, but I think we're heading back. Like if I but feel the weather trends over like the last, I don't know, 15 years or whatever. So tomatoes, if you can, grow them under cover. If you can't, then, you know, it is what it is. Choose smaller tomatoes so that they ripen a lot quicker. Well, quicker is relative, but they will ripen bigger than those big old juicy like beefsteak tomatoes or whatever. And that was the case. My Juliet's, the ones that are larger, they're like a little plum tomato. So they're not a cherry, but they're not as big as like a medium-sized tomato. I got tons of those ripened. My Romas, which obviously, or San Marzano, or I honestly don't remember, they are larger, same kind of ish shape, but they're larger. I didn't get a lot of those. And then of course my determinants, which are known for being more flexible with the cold, those did pretty well. And cherries are really easy for our area. So my outdoor experiment of tomatoes in a slightly shadier area than I really should be growing them, all in all, it turned out well. If we would have just ended a little bit more warm, I think it would have been better. Next up are onions. Ugh. So for those of you that don't remember, my house flooded in January, and till like May or June, I was not living here. And so I was kind of like trying to come back and forth, and it was hectic. But one of the I wasn't thinking, and the store had the little sets, or the little starts. I always mix them up between sets, bulbs. I think it's sets of the onion, and I wasn't thinking. I just grabbed them, planted them right away because I didn't know when I'd be back, and I didn't think about it. I planted them too early. Planting them too early makes it, because they're biannual, so they're supposed to flower after they think they've been through 2 winters. They were not, but they thought they were, because obviously they keep them cold in storage, and then it was cold when I planted them. So most of them went to flowers, which is why I have this fancy microphone. This is technically a leak, but whatever. Beautiful flowers though, loved by wasps like no tomorrow. But so I did get a really good harvest just because I did plant hundreds of them. But I lost a lot to going to flower. I made a lot of dehydrated onion and onion powder and stuff, but I really like pulling those huge bulbs out. So my bad. I should have been paying more attention with the onions, but that's something I messed up. My cauliflower, you know, one of my favorite vegetables aside from broccoli, I like carrots. Okay, well, I have a lot of favorites, but one of my absolute favorites and most versatile, this for sure, versatile, is cauliflower. And, you know, I struggle so much with slugs in my cauliflower. And I don't know if you have this problem or not, but it's like, you'll know if you do have that problem, the white, whatever it's called, floret, the white head or whatever. Well, you'll see like little nibbles and like little trails and like all of that. And so I've like contemplated using the organic Sluggo, but I don't really know anything about it. I have to spend like 3 weeks researching it, so I never use it. So I think, so I wasn't able to use a lot of my, a lot of my cauliflower, and I was really bummed about that. I do have professional pest exterminators, and by that I mean ducks, and they're, well, right behind you. But now that I have raised beds, and I also have a lot of snakes, and the garter snakes and whatever, but none of those things can get into the raised bed. I did try and think about how I can make like a snake ramp up into the raised beds, but I have like 26 of them, and having all these snake ramps, plus I don't know what's required for a snake ramp. So anyways, all that to say is that one of the downsides is that the slug pressure goes a little bit more unchecked, besides natural predators, which I have a lot of. But though I did one time find a snake in my raised bed, I don't know how he got up there, but I was very proud of him. So yes, cauliflower, you know, in future years, though I've said this before, is I think about not growing it and just doubling down on my broccoli, because I do really love broccoli, and it's so amazing to freeze and pull it out all winter. So I think if I can remember to stay true to my word, I will only grow broccoli next year, but we'll see how that goes. Next are sunflowers. So my sunflowers, I thought this was a genius idea. So in one of the back beds, I have an asparagus row, and it was just planted this year. So I got little baby asparagus, and I don't pull them because you got to wait like 70 years or something like that. So I was like, well, it's 4-foot wide bed, I might as well just put a few little things in there, as I tend to do. And so I transplanted cabbage, beautiful cabbage it ended up being. But I also, because it's my farthest north bed, and so, because with sunflowers, they'll block, depending on where you put them, they will block the sun or whatever, or hopefully will with their huge blossoms or whatever. And so I thought, you know what, that would be a beautiful backdrop of like the whole gardenscape. And so I planted a row of sunflowers. And one thing I misinterpreted was I didn't realize that the cabbage would grow. Of course, I didn't realize I was going to get such huge cabbages, but the cabbage grew much faster. I guess they also like the cooler weather than the sunflowers. And so they kind of the sunflowers were kind of growing around them. And also it was a single line. And so they were kind of weak in general. So when we had a little bit of winds or even heavy rains, they were like falling over and breaking. And so I either need to provide a support or plant them a little more densely so like they can like support or windbreak themselves. So lesson learned. I still love sunflowers, but they look a little crazy. Like I've got one that, because the bed's like 2 feet tall, so it like comes over and it's broken, but he's still hanging on, and then goes down, and then he started growing up, and like, I don't know, crazy designs, but Mother Nature will find a way. But it isn't as beautiful as I had it in my head. Next thing is raspberry. Raspberries, so again, I talked about the transition of the fruit farm. And so I purchased a lot of raspberry starts, Himbo Top, from Norse Farm. And so I got those planted or whatever. And I didn't expect to get a harvest. I actually got a little bit of raspberries, but I didn't expect to, and I wasn't thinking, and obviously I'm busy with everything else. They grew fast and they were growing straight up, and I was like, oh, okay, well that looks great. I'll get trellis on when I can get to it. I struggle with trellis in general. And everything was all fine and dandy until they started to bear fruit, because then those straight up and down, stalks or whatever, plants, they were so heavy with delicious berries. So then they fall over, and it just then I was trying to like put trellis up, but then trying to lift them, and it was a mess. So I'm going to prune back in the winter, get my trellis in place, and next year I won't have to mess with that. Next on my list is loofah. Loofah is, for those of you who don't know, it's that bath thing or whatever that like a lot of people use to exfoliate or use as natural sponges. Well, it's actually a gourd, squash, something like that. I've never grown it, so I don't know. And apparently I did not this year. But anywho, I forgot about it, and my friend had some seeds. And I was like, yes, please. They would not grow. And I thought that was kind of odd. And so I tried to transplant them out. Nothing was going on. I was really bummed about that. And she's like, well, do you want more seeds? And I said, I'm kind of running late on when I should try to restart. But you know what? I'm really committed. I'll try direct sowing. I know anything in the Sorry, I got a plant in my mouth. Or not a plant, a little like fly thing or whatever. But anything in the like cucurbitaceae family. Yes, I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, do you hear the ducks? The turkeys are in the back. They probably put themselves to sleep because with it getting darker earlier. But anyways, they don't like to be transplanted. So I did direct sow those and gave them my full attention, and just nothing. So with that one, I do think it was the seed. Because I know that she got quite a few seeds from this company, and they didn't really turn out to her liking. And like she'd send me pictures and like, what is this plant? And I'm like, I have no idea. That's a cross of something, you know. So that one, I think it's the seed, but still I couldn't get it going. Got them to sprout, but no, they're supposed to like, each plant's supposed to like grow up like a 20 by 20 trellis area and produce like a whole bunch of these loofahs, and then you like dry them out and then cut them into sponges. I was so excited. All my dreams dashed. Next one actually pertains to these rows. I got a lot of strawberries, like 1,500, 2,000, I don't remember, strawberry plants this year as little itty bitty babies without any leaves or whatever. And so I planted them in a large majority of the raised beds. And so I did 4 rows spaced about a foot apart, and then spacing every, I think it was foot. Yeah, every foot. So a foot in each direction, basically. And I had so much ground, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to waste not, want not, or whatever. And so I interplanted a lot of things. The bed, oh, you can't really see it, to the tomatillos were just absolutely getting eaten. Behind me, these were the leeks. And I let some go to seed just because the bees really like them, and the wasps or whatever. I know a lot of people don't like wasps, but they are predatory insects. And I find the pest pressure, minus those slugs, on my farm to be pretty manageable, and I can't help but think it's related to them. So difference of opinions, but so I do like to nurture wasp and all pollinator friendly environments. So I leave them, even though I was viciously attacked a couple weeks ago. I took 11 stings in one go. And everyone's like, you gonna get rid of it? I was like, no, I'll just avoid that area till November though. But anyways, so I failed to remember how fast strawberries spread out. I knew it, but I thought that the plants would get a head start. And this year was my first year, and that'll lead to my next thing. My first year growing June-bearing strawberries. I've always grown the Day Neutral or what, the Albions. I've grown those forever. I love those strawberries. These are cabbage, which are really, it's June-bearing, huge, monstrous, big strawberry, just amazing. And like literally the whole like size of my hand, and I don't have big hands. But the plants got so big and kind of like ate everything that I had. Like I had huge tomatillo plants, and like the strawberries like tore them down. And then I was like hunting for tomatillos, but then they were like rotting because they were under like the leaf canopy. And so apparently that wasn't as good, but you know what? You got to try. All right. Oh, my next thing, June bearing strawberries. One thing I had no idea about, because my whole life I have grown the Day Neutral Albion strawberries and not June bearing strawberries. I guess in June bearing, after they produce, you have to cut them back or mow them or whatever it is. I had no idea. I've never done that with my Day Neutral ones. So I've got, as you can see, just a wall. Look at my marigolds. Aren't they so pretty? Just a wall of beds full of strawberries. And I'm like, well, I did some research. They said that it's mostly for disease problems. I'm not struggling with disease, which is really great. It's also first year. We'll definitely do it next year. And I do need to thin them. So I'm thinking early spring is when I'm planning to tackle that. But lessons learned. And if you have June bearing strawberries, apparently after they produce their fruit in June, you want to go ahead and clean them up. All right, almost to the end. This one isn't necessarily the garden's fault, but this is my fault. I kind of dropped the ball on planting for fall. Which I have quite a few videos on this, but fall, like planting for the fall is not planting in October or even September. It's really June to July, because as soon as the temperature starts dipping or the days start getting shorter even a little bit, the plants, they know what to do, you know, and so they slow down growth and all that stuff. So I did get some stuff in, namely I forgot spinach. I think I'm probably still gonna throw some seeds in just to see what happens. And then if they don't take off, which I'm sure they won't, now they'll pop up first thing in spring. But nonetheless, I kind of dropped the ball on getting back in the house and getting everything organized, and, you know, really converting the farm into berries just took a lot of my time. And so I dropped the ball on quite a few things. And so if you feel stressed with your garden, I want you to know that like it happens, it's a thing, you know, every year it's always going to be something. So I wish I would have been a little more proactive with fall planting or planting for fall, whatever. Second to last thing is basil. You know, I always have really great luck with basil, but I did my outside tomato test, and so I left them a little more wild than I normally do because the Juliets, which was the bulk of my tomato planting, as I mentioned earlier, it's bigger than a cherry, but it's not it's a little smaller than a medium, but it's definitely not medium or large size. So I wanted, since it will produce what I was hoping for and came true, a whole lot of tomatoes, I wanted all that extra foliage greens, you know, one, to protect it, and two, to just absorb what sun we have, and I knew it was going to be in the shade. So that was all great, but I always interplant my tomatoes and my basil because amazing. And they have similar growing habits and whatever else. They're just great companion plants. But, I didn't think about it with how bushy I let my tomatoes be. My basil just did not make it, was not happy, and didn't see the light of day for quite a while. So, oopsie on that one. And I also planted them a little more densely because they were in the raised bed. I don't have as much room. All right, last but not least, I don't know if this is so much my problem. I thought it would be okay. So I have a bunch of beds with blueberries in them. And so if you don't know, you have to acidify the soil it also depends on what your natural pH is or whatever. But you have to acidify the soil because blueberries like it really, really acidic. And so I did add acid to the soil to make it sulfur, excuse me, elemental sulfur. But it takes a while to kick in, so I thought I'd be fine because it wasn't, you know, I should have had the pH a little bit lower before putting the blueberries in, but they'd be fine. And so, but I had, again, it's the first year for a lot of these fruits. And so I'm like, I'll just try and sneak some stuff in there. So I planted a lot of pumpkins in with my blueberries with the idea, because you can see the beds. Now, obviously this is not a blueberry bed, but I planted them right in the front, and then I figured they'd grow over and you wouldn't be able to walk through there, and I'd have a big bunch of pumpkins and it'd be so beautiful and amazing and all that other stuff. I did direct sow too, which is always the gold standard for pumpkins, cucumbers, cucumbaceae, whatever. I mentioned that earlier. So I did direct sow them, but they just looked spindly and took forever to take off. Now, I don't know if it was the cool weather, so if you let me know how your pumpkins went, if you generally have success with pumpkins and they were no-go this year, then maybe it wasn't me. But also I think the soil, it's obviously as it's working towards a lower pH, I understand that it goes out of the pH that's optimal for, growing, vegetables and stuff like that. I just thought that it would be okay, but based on my tiny little pumpkin, they were not happy. There was one bed though that didn't have the elemental sulfur in it, and that one didn't do anything either. So I knew for sure. I put my best pumpkin in it. It was probably like Howard or whatever. It's my favorite pumpkin. Wait, is it Howard? Handle? I don't know, something like that. But it was, it's a quick growing, like jack-o'-lantern, but it's flatter because I like them when they're taller and flatter more than like fat. I don't know. And, so I planted that in the area and they didn't really do anything either. So let me know if you had a weird pumpkin year. And that actually rounds out my list. So those are, sorry, a little bit of a long video, but I just wanted to share all of the opportunities, failures, missteps on the plant side, because I'll blame them for a few things, but most of it was my fault or whatever. I just wanted to share those and make sure, especially newer gardeners or even experienced gardeners, sometimes it's just whoa, this is a weird year. Or, I remember the first time we had a heat wave, everybody, nobody was expecting that. And it's everything got fried. And it's okay, well, no more summer lettuce and, all those other things. So things happen. The pest cycle changes every year. the climate, whatever, changes every year. Your life changes every year, and don't be too hard on yourself. So if you've made, I promise I won't do that again. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that again. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind leaving me a comment or a like, that helps me, which is really awesome. And I would also love to hear any of the things you struggled with this year, because I think we all learn from each other. I know the first time I had the cucumber fail 3-4-ish years ago, I talked about it, and literally all the comments were like, same. I've grown tomatoes every year, never had a problem. Now I'm having a problem. So seeing it multiple times always helps everybody feel better. And I love our community. So anyways, thank you for watching. Happy gardening. Bye.